Have you ever heard of a king who bathed in the blood of the young just to stay forever youthful? History tells us of rulers so desperate to escape old age, they treated blood like water, believing it carried the essence of life itself. From whispered cures in royal courts to legends that still haunt us today, this isn't just myth. In this video, we uncover the strange obsession with bathing in blood, an obsession that drained the lives of the innocent. In the medieval imagination, blood was not simply a fluid, it was life itself. To bleed was to weaken, to pale was to fade, and to grow cold was to inch closer to death. Physicians, monks, and scholars all agreed, within the crimson stream lay vitality, warmth, and even the soul's essence. This conviction came from the bedrock of medieval medicine, humoral theory. Health, they believed, rested upon a delicate balance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each humour was tied to qualities of heat and moisture. Youth, then, was considered hot and moist, the perfect condition for vigour, fertility, and strength. Old age, by contrast, was cold and dry, the body's fire dwindling to ash. The logic seemed simple: if age drained the warmth of life, then what better cure than to take the very blood of the young? In its redness lay the fire of vitality. In its heat, the spark of renewal. To medieval minds, this was not cruelty, it was science, or at least what science looked like in an age when religion, superstition, and medicine blurred into one. From this belief emerged practices both unsettling and astonishing. A sip of warm animal blood, taken straight after the slaughter, was thought to strengthen the heart. Some physicians suggested that drinking the blood of the young might restore fading youth, though this hovered at the edge of rumor and forbidden experiment. And in whispers that flickered through courts and monasteries, there were even darker ideas, that bathing in blood itself might allow the old to absorb the vitality of the young. It is here, at the crossroads of desperation and belief, that medicine began shading into myth. To understand why kings, popes, and nobles would later turn to such grotesque remedies, one must first grasp this conviction, that blood was not only a substance, but a living force. A bridge between mortality and the dream of eternity. The stage was set. All it needed now was rulers desperate enough, physicians bold enough, and legends lurid enough to carry this belief from medical theory into the realm of horror. If blood was the essence of life, then it was only natural that the most powerful men of the medieval world would try to claim it for themselves. After all, who feared death more than those who ruled? Kings, queens, and popes carried not only their own lives but the fate of nations upon their shoulders. And as the weight of age pressed down, they turned to the physicians of their courts with a single, desperate command: keep me young, keep me alive. Some remedies were eccentric but harmless: exotic herbs, rare wines, or ritual baths in hot springs. But others were far darker. Chroniclers of the late 15th century whisper of one of the most infamous cases: Pope Innocent VIII, a frail pontiff whose health was rapidly failing in 1492. According to reports, his doctors arranged for 3 young boys to be bled, their life's essence siphoned into the dying pope in the hope that youthful vigor might pass into his veins. The boys perished, and Innocent soon followed, but the legend remained, a chilling tale of how far desperation could go when life itself seemed to slip away. Such stories were not isolated. Medieval courts were steeped in the conviction that youth could be stolen, transferred, or absorbed. Some rulers bathed in animal blood after hunts, stepping into steaming crimson as if to soak up vitality from the slain beast. Others experimented with draughts of warm blood, believing its heat could rekindle their own dwindling fires. These rituals, performed in gilded chambers and shadowed crypts alike, were justified not as cruelty but as medicine. In a world where physicians spoke of blood as warmth and vigor, the logic felt undeniable: to grow old was to grow cold, and only blood could bring back the heat. Yet as these practices spread, so too did the myths that surrounded them. Whispers of rulers who sought not just animal blood, but human. Murmurs of queens who preserved their beauty with scarlet baths, of princes who sipped from chalices filled with the essence of youth. Fact blurred with legend, and what began as medical theory grew into something far more grotesque. Whispers of rulers who dabbled in blood were easy to dismiss as rumor, until specific names began to attach themselves to the stories. The line between history and legend blurred, and what might have been desperate medical experiments became immortal tales of horror. The most striking example came at the very heart of Christendom. Pope Innocent VIII, whose fragile health dominated the final year of his reign, was said to have submitted himself to a macabre treatment. Chroniclers described how his physicians ordered the veins of 3 young boys to be opened, their blood collected and administered to the pontiff. The promise was simple: youthful vitality passing into his failing body. But instead of life, it brought only death. The boys perished, and the Pope died soon after. Whether the story unfolded exactly as told remains debated, but the very fact that it spread across Europe reveals something vital. It reflected what people already believed their rulers were willing to attempt. And then came the legend of Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess of 16th-century Hungary. Though her story falls just beyond the medieval period, it grew directly out of those earlier obsessions with blood and youth. Bathory was accused of luring young servant girls to her castle, murdering them, and bathing in their blood to preserve her beauty. Later historians argue that much of this tale was exaggerated or even fabricated by political enemies, but the myth took on a life of its own. To the popular imagination, she became the embodiment of vanity turned monstrous, the noblewoman who literally soaked herself in youth at the expense of the innocent. What connects these stories is not their factual certainty, but the medieval mindset that made them believable. Blood was life. Youthful blood, especially, seemed to contain the warmth and vitality that the old so desperately craved. The accounts of Innocent VIII and Bathory were retold again and again, not because everyone believed the details, but because they fit the logic of the age. If rulers were already consuming exotic elixirs, bathing in animal blood, and seeking alchemical miracles, then was it really so unthinkable that they might cross even darker lines? These tales became more than history. They became cautionary legends, reminders of what fear of death and obsession with power could drive humanity to imagine. Stories like those of Innocent VIII and Elizabeth Bathory did more than terrify. They revealed how fragile the boundary was between medicine and superstition in the medieval world. Whether fact, rumor, or outright propaganda, these tales stuck because they reflected a truth about the age. People believed blood carried life, and life was worth any price. And that belief did not fade quietly. 4 centuries after, echoes of these practices lingered in Europe's medical imagination. Physicians prescribed draughts of animal blood for epilepsy. Some nobles were said to wash their faces in the warm blood of a freshly killed deer after a hunt, hoping the animal's vitality would pass into their skin. Even as science slowly advanced, superstition clung stubbornly to the body like a shadow. But why did the idea of bathing in blood resonate so powerfully? The answer lies in the medieval fear of aging and death. Unlike today, where medicine works with microscopes and chemistry, medieval people looked for cures in symbolism. Blood was not just fluid, it was the very spark of existence. If old age meant coldness and dryness, then young blood, hot and moist, was the antidote. To a world desperate for hope, even the grotesque seemed logical. This is why legends of bloodbaths became so enduring. They were never just about individual rulers. They were about the fear of every aging monarch, every noble watching their power slip away with time. Did kings truly bathe in the blood of children? The historical evidence is thin, more whispered than witnessed. But the fact that the story persists tells us what mattered most. People believed it could have happened. And in that belief, rulers became monsters, their hunger for life painted in the darkest shades possible. Ultimately, what survives is not a record of medicine but a mirror of medieval anxieties. The Pope drained of youth, the Countess drowning in vanity, the whispered kings bathing in blood. Whether real or imagined, they remind us of how terror and hope once shared the same vessel. And so the tale of the king who bathed in the blood of children for eternal youth is less a single event and more a haunting symbol. A legend born from fear, superstition, and the desperate dream of escaping the one fate no ruler, no matter how powerful, could ever conquer: death itself. And blood wasn't the only strange remedy. Medieval history is full of bizarre, terrifying practices you won't believe. If you want to uncover more of the cures, curses, and secrets they swore by, hit subscribe, because the strangest stories are still to come.